Yesterday was a heartbreaking day for our city. My heart breaks for Ricardo Munez family and the devastation it brought our community. A life was lost and lives were forever changed, including the officer involved. As you know, the district attorney's office has commenced their investigation. Some preliminary information was released last night, along with some body camera footage. While we await the findings of the DA's investigation, I want to address the larger issues at hand. Many neighbors on the street yesterday were asking about the use of force in response to calls for service that involved mental health. These are questions we are asking too, and it is why Lancaster is the only police department in the county with a social worker and an additional hire in process. In this way, the Police Bureau has been working to address alternative approaches to de-escalating calls for service. I know that our police respond to many calls for services related to mental health here and other departments across the county. Sometimes police have considerable information and ambulances are dispatched concurrently. Many times these are de-escalated and individuals are able to get treatment that they need. Right now, the only system that is in place for someone who has an emergency, like what we saw yesterday, is to call 911 and wait for police or an ambulance dispatch. At the same time, there has been more than a decade's worth of cuts to state-funded and county-delivered behavioral health and human services. Cuts born out of the last recession were never filled. And here we are again, staring down a $5 billion state budget deficit, which will likely impact these same services yet again. The need is clear. Who should respond, under what circumstances, and what protocols should be followed? How are these calls dispatched from County 911? There are a lot of uncertainties and nuance to these situations which can change and rapidly escalate. We need an evidence-based protocol for responding. What is that protocol? Additionally, how do we create and staff a system that can respond 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and within minutes? These are just a few of the questions that need to be answered to create a county-wide plan. I am calling on the governor, state senators, state house members, county commissioners, behavioral health experts, and police from law enforcement jurisdictions across the Commonwealth to come together and put forward a human-centered solution that will work in every county in addition to Lancaster. We have rolled up our sleeves, done some local analysis we can share about calls for service, and are ready to work with these partners to a better way. However, I am clear, beyond a doubt, that we lack the tools, the resources, the expertise, and the capacity to do this on our own here in the city of Lancaster. I need help. We need help. This isn't just about police. It's about the fact that a third, or more like half, depending on how you measure it, of our city residents live below the poverty line. It's about a third of the jobs in our region being so low wage that no hardworking person holding one of them down can make it work. It's about half the renters in our city, thousands of households burdened by the cost of their housing, paying more than 30% of their income. Decades of stagnant wages and rising housing costs leave little to no margin. Those of us closest to the problem here at the city and in community organizations working to build more housing or deliver social services have far too few tools to build what's actually needed to be able to respond to those needs. And let me just make this abundantly clear if it's not already. The poorest among us are also our communities that are Black and brown. they are also the communities that are being affected most directly by COVID, unemployment, and the uncertainty of this economic situation. We must fund housing, social services, and education equitably and adequately in this city. I'm calling on our representatives in the state legislature, regardless of political party, representatives at the federal level, again, regardless of political party, to support efforts to improve the conditions of our neighbors, especially around housing and economic inequality. But it's more than just housing and economic inequality. It is a lack of access to the kinds of services that we all, some of us, are fortunate to be able to benefit from, like mental health services. The pain of your city and the constituents that live here, speaking to our elected officials up the chain, is raw and it is real. It has been present on our streets since the end of May. And while the vast majority of the protests have been peaceful, last night's events took a turn, resulting in considerable damage. I want to be clear that there is no place for this in our community. And I angst over the potential for anyone to be seriously injured, knowing that it is our city staff, including our police officers and members of the executive leadership team, city council members, members of the community police working group, our friends and neighbors who are out on the street. Peaceful protests must prevail. I am asking community groups, faith communities, nonprofit organizations, businesses, and employers to join with us and seize this moment to look at the whole picture, to ask real questions. Again, in the wake of COVID-19, things are not about to get better. And the economic fallout is going to take a kind of effort that we have never seen as a community, a state, or a country. Lancaster, if we care so deeply about loving our neighbor, then let's do it. Lancaster, if we care so deeply about poverty, then let's really address it. Lancaster, if we are truly a city of welcome, then all of our neighbors, regardless of what their skin color is, must feel it. Our country may be divided across every line imaginable, but our city, this community that is the heartbeat and jewel of this county, cannot be. And it will take all of us. And I am asking all of us to show up and do the work that is necessary to move our community forward at this moment, this critical moment for our future and the future of all of Lancastrians. The city, of course, welcomes your input, concerns, and questions, which can be sent to info@cityoflancasterpa.com. I am pleased to now ask Council President Smith-Waddell to say a few remarks. We also have members of the Community Police Working Group. A couple of those individuals will also speak. We will have some time at the end for questions and answers. I want to make clear that because this is an active investigation, I will be limited in terms of what I can share with you. We can further discuss items under review by the administration, Community Police Working Group that's underway. We can also discuss community engagement and what the work that we're continuing to do to support our neighbors. And with that, Council President, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. As the president of Lancaster City Council, first I want to take a moment to thank my council colleagues as well as all of the city staff who were engaged from last night through this morning, and only because I don't think they're going to get a specific shout out. I want to thank the public works staff and the work that they've done downtown. I was there at 3 in the morning, and the difference that they've put into getting it clean as quickly as possible is like night and day. But most importantly, what I want to ask you to do is, if it's at all possible, get outside of the conversation of last night. I do not feel that we can reduce generations of trauma, grief, fear, and anger to a single incident that we deem justified or unjustified. I am acutely aware, and from personal experience, of the struggles that Lancastrians face in accessing equitable and affordable mental health care, and I cannot help but wonder, if Mr. Munoz got all the care he needed years ago, could we possibly be in a different place? Could his family and could that officer all be in a different place? And this buttresses the notion that our county and each of the municipalities within it must take immediate action to make sure that behavioral health, that housing and social services and other forms of care are immediately and readily available all across the county. We talk a lot about diverting certain calls to social workers and crisis interveners, and the truth is that I would eagerly do that to keep my community safe and my officers safe, and I am sure that council would support that effort as well. But we need the county to rehaul entirely how we do 911 dispatch, and I will go so far as to say that those dispatchers who are burnt out and work all night are criminally underpaid. If we spend all our time talking about this in terms of the events of last night and this morning, we will have missed a colossal opportunity to take the energy that we felt in the streets last night and turn it toward actual change. So, as an elected official in Lancaster County, I join the mayor in calling on every elected official that represents any part of real estate in Lancaster County to demand change at the state and county levels. Housing is mental health care. Access to food is mental health care, and obviously, access to mental health care is mental health care. And where our citizens are lacking in these things, we are poorer and less safe for it. So I don't have any other fancy words other than to say thank you again to the members of the Community Police Working Group, to my council colleagues, and to the community. And actually, I do have one thing. This landed at my feet last night. They're very hot, so I had to wait and take some time to come back and get it. I want to give a special thank you to everybody who I know at 4 a.m. this morning was showering the CS gas off of their bodies and then got up and came back to work because this place is that important to them. So to everybody I'm talking about, you honor me and you honor my home. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Take this home. First of all, let me express my grief for the family of this young man, and particularly for the mother and sisters that have experienced this tragedy, and also offer our prayers for the officer that was involved in the shooting. Our job as part of the police community group is to try to bridge the gap between the community and the city government, particularly the police department. We've been working diligently to bring forth a strategic plan, to work in concert not only with the city council, the mayor, and the police department, but also with the community. We understand that this is a difficult situation. People have the right to be angry. People have the right to have questions. People have the right to want to protest. But we plead with those who are committing violence in our city to property and to people that this would cease. We love our city. Our effort is to create a model city for others to emulate. But if outside agitators or even inside agitators will take advantage of that anger and express that anger through damage of property and person, they will suffer the consequences. We want to see an investigation that offers integrity, that is above reproach, and we believe that will happen. We're going to make sure of that. But at the same time, we are asking all of those that are protesting to please protest peacefully. Let your voices be heard. We offer ourselves as go-betweens. You can come to any of our offices. You can call us at any time, and we're there for you. We promise that our doors are open. We are praying for everyone in the city. Every pastor in this city, every resident of this city is feeling the same pain today. We're now on national news. The climate of this country has fostered distrust among all of us. That must cease. It's time for all of us to come together and to offer a solution. We support what the mayor is saying, what the city council is saying, and we're going to echo and stand in agreement with them.
Thank you. That was eloquent, they said. Good afternoon, everyone. For starters, I'd like to share my condolences to the family. Yesterday was a very hard day for everybody. There were a lot of issues at play here. One of them was social media. Social media played a significant role into how everything played out yesterday, from the false narratives to the passion of our communities. Nonetheless, it was a difficult day for our city and for our communities. I saw a lot of things yesterday, and not very many people saw what I saw, but I did see a lot of people that are passionate about our communities. There were protesters that were there, and they were angry, rightfully so. There were a lot of false narratives going on, and so it brought out a multitude of people. We do have some issues here in the city when it comes to addressing mental health. I have 2 children that are on the autism spectrum. This was very real for me as well. What I did see was passion. I did see our protesters standing up and shouting, "Our city, our streets." And they were very true to that statement. There were infiltrators, many infiltrators, that were about the rioting and the looting, and they told them to go back where they came from. This is not what we want for our city. I want to thank the members of City Council that were there last night for hours, just about the whole day. Members of the Community Police Working Group, members of clergy, and just the many people that were there to help try to resolve, or not resolve, but to bring calm, to share the truths of what was actually happening. There were a lot of lies that were spread, and our job was to make sure that everybody knew the facts based on what we were told. We need to do better as a community. Our lives matter. We need to make sure that we're standing up and we're coming to these city council meetings, that we're attending other meetings that are necessary in order for us to be able to address the needs that we have as a city. Mental health is very big here. Homelessness is very big here. And until we don't start coming in and attending these meetings and start holding these folks accountable and asking for these issues to be resolved, they won't be resolved. It is our responsibility to make sure that everyone's needs are being met here. Thank you.
So in case you need the details, Delia Sanchez, member of the Community Police Working Group, and of course, Reverend Roland Forbes. I will now be glad to take some questions.
Mayor Manley, what do we have in place in Lancaster City right now that could have been done better and used better from a mental health capacity on yesterday's call?
Meredith, I don't even know how to answer that question because we don't have other resources at our disposal in terms of responding to any of the police calls. What we have is in the way of our police officers' training related to de-escalation, mental health crisis. Those kinds of calls come in, and you know, a couple of weeks ago, an officer spent an hour talking to somebody through a door, you know, to de-escalate a situation. But our police know, because they were the ones that put forward the recommendation to hire a social worker in the first place, that we get repeated calls to the same house, and we need to have social service intervention, and we need to be making connections and wraparound resources to do that. And so I can't really comment on what could have done differently yesterday, especially because this is an active investigation and there are parts of it that I don't know.
Mayor, can you just repeat the question?
Oh, yes. Meredith, say it again.
What resources do we have available right now that could have been used in yesterday's situation?
What resources do we have available right now in the city of Lancaster that could have resulted or been deployed yesterday? Hi there, Grace.
We keep talking about mental health issues. Was it known that Mr. Nunez had mental health issues? And another question is, in terms of last night protesters were very upset that they had rubber bullets that they were hit with. People wanted to know if there was any sort of incident that happened that led up to those rubber bullets being deployed and the tear gas that they said they got hit with.
So I have no knowledge of any rubber bullets. I do not know all of the details of what led to the use of chemical, what did you call it? The chemical? CS gas. I do know that that was, that we had additional officers from other departments, including the county CERT team, that were here last night. And to your first question, I do not know. There's been a lot of circulating rumors about various diagnoses, and none of that has been confirmed, and I will not speculate. Hello.
Common for just one officer to respond to domestic incidents like that?
So that is a good question, and just in general, I will respond to that, and Sergeant Morant can help me out if I get this wrong. But calls are dispatched in order of priority based on different levels, and based on that call number, there will be more than one officer that is dispatched. The officer that arrived yesterday on the scene was there and went to respond by himself, although other cars were en route.
What do we know about who was out on the streets last night? We've heard that most of the protests were peaceful, but then we've heard about infiltrators and agitators. So who do we know about who was out last night?
You know, I can't answer that question. I don't know the folks that were out. What I can tell you is that many of us did not recognize some of the folks. Now, obviously, there were folks that were there that are well known to us as community members and colleagues and so on, but there were folks there that, as I understand it, that we just didn't know who they were. And I don't know how many people that is. I don't know where they're from, what their story is. I can't answer any of those questions. Council President, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Nothing other than to say it is as Delia described. I did talk to some persons out last night, especially between midnight and 3 a.m., who indicated to me that they were not right. Of course, I'm not using the microphone. An idiot. Apologies. Sorry. There were several persons that I spoke to last night who did not give me their names, but did indicate to me that they were from places outside of Lancaster County, including Harrisburg. And I just want to reinforce what Delia said, that there were a number of persons that were present who are known to us and who are very passionate and frankly even quite confrontational, but that did specifically ask persons not following their leadership and not from this community to sort of cut it out with some of the more aggressive behavior they were engaging, such as setting fires and moving dumpsters.
What is your message to the protesters from Lancaster who want to maintain peaceful protests and maybe differentiate themselves from the infiltrators? That was the word that was used.
Yeah, so, and perhaps the mayor will have a different answer, but honestly, I think that those protesters who wish to differentiate themselves, in fact, should just keep doing exactly what they were doing. That doesn't typically make headlines, but my experience was primarily of people trying to restrain one another, get between one another, and violence, and break up fights. At one point up on Laurel Street, I witnessed somebody attempt to set fire to the county coroner's vehicle, and then I witnessed several persons who were present move immediately to remove the burning object from the car. I think that protesters from our community know exactly what they're doing and can continue to do as they do if they want to differentiate themselves.
Can I say right quick that?
You gotta,
I'm sorry.
yep, we gotta do this.
A lot of the protesters themselves from within the peaceful group did try to confront the violent protesters. And they expressed their anger, they expressed their displeasure. I believe at one point they tried to withdraw themselves because of what was going on around them. It just escalated.
Other questions?
I have one more. I know you can't go into very many details because the investigation is ongoing, but were there any other officers on scene yesterday at the time of the incident?
Were there any other officers on scene yesterday at the time of the incident? I do not know the answer to that question, Grace. I'm sorry. Meredith,
Do you expect any more violence this evening?
do I expect any more violence this evening? Meredith, you asking me that just makes me want to throw up, quite honestly. It is my fervent hope that there is no violence in the city of Lancaster this night or any other night.
And just a protocol question, I wonder if Sergeant Rand might be able to help. There were some concerns in the neighborhood about the man's body not being covered. Or is there police protocol about what
I can
happened?
respond to that. The DA's office immediately takes over investigation. Our job at that point, and we had additional help from outside of the Lancaster City Police Bureau to come in and secure the crime scene. And at that point, it is a wait until the district attorney's office can come and process the crime scene and the coroner could appear. I wholeheartedly understand the frustration about the time that it took, and those questions would need to be directed to the district attorney's office to understand their protocol. Yes.
Can you talk about how the social services officer is deployed and whether she is on the weekends, like on a Sunday?
Yeah, so right now, we're in the midst of hiring a second social worker who we are trying to change up hours to make evening and weekend hours an option. Right now, Mrs. Tron is available during the day and some evenings. How those calls are deployed at this point in time have to do with, on as-needed referrals from individual officers who come and say, like, whatever the situation is, and then she is following up, as well as direct calls for support from Mrs. Tron. Having, one social worker obviously has its limitations, and I will also say that this has been a steep learning curve because all of our officers, like, we've never had this position before in the city of Lancaster, and so we are learning, and that continues to evolve as well. And I'll also just note that we have had a significant amount of her work has filled the gap as it relates to homelessness and homelessness outreach, but now we have more staffing within our partner organizations to help fill that gap. So trying to move Leilani and her time, Mrs. Tran's time, back out into our neighborhoods. Yes?
Mayor, how will the city help those businesses that got damaged last night?
Those individual businesses have property insurance, and obviously we are assisting with public right-of-way and cleanup. We understand and appreciate that this is an additional cost and time for the businesses that were affected.
Some of the frustrations that we were hearing on the street was it's been 4 months since the activism started, and that it doesn't appear to some people that there's been much progress being made. There hasn't been a lot of, what's come out in the public as the changes that might be through these conversations. Can you elaborate a little bit as to any changes that have been made in protocol and through these talks with these community groups?
I can, and if you would just help me by telling me who you are.
Oh, I'm Michael from CBS Orlando.
Okay, thank you, Michael. The masks are throwing me off. What progress has been made? So I know that this is, the expectations are set really high for how quickly systems can change and the changes that we are making here at the city. I also appreciate and feel the sense of urgency that people have to see more immediate, and I'll use the word seismic changes. And I'll also just note that we are working against hundreds of years of systems, as well as, just in the matter of addressing some of the issues around police, complexity that cannot be turned on a dime. And I will also say that the Police Bureau has been, and Chief Berkeyheiser has been incredibly dedicated to making changes within the Bureau, and those things also take time. And so I would encourage others who are feeling that way to look around at other communities and ask what they're doing. Where are those changes happening? How does that compare to Lancaster? And what I would say is that we have been very comprehensive in our response to racial equity issues that extend far beyond the Police Bureau, because as I think we are all talking, and as President Smith-Waddell alluded to, these are circumstances and situations that aren't just about one thing. There's a lot of legacy.
Shelby.
Sorry, hi Shelby.
Hi. Please bear with me as I work through this question. I'll try to ask it to the best of my ability. Earlier, one of the questions mentioned was protocol as far as what was put out there about the body being left. I understand there's protocol as far as the DA coming out and investigating the scene. We're all journalists. We showed up to plenty of crime scenes and have seen what that process looks like. But this question is more so on behalf as neighbors, residents who witnessed this happen, who had to see the body. Can his body be there for X amount of time. You know, we have to consider some of the traumas that also comes with that. So even though we did have to wait for the DA to come and do that, what protocols are in place as far as the police station goes, of even simply having a sheet maybe in their car to cover these bodies to wait until, or even it being blocked off? I mean, when we think about a body laying out supposedly for over an hour, or however long the time period is, that also is damaging in itself to not only everyone involved, but as a community. So, I guess.
So, yes, Shelby, I think your question, the heart of the question is really about the trauma among residents and others who are on that block and what they experienced as a result of the shooting yesterday. And what I'll say is that's something that we are, I can't speak to exactly what happened or the timing of when police arrived or screening or any of that. What I can speak to is that that is a conversation that we're having among the Community Police Working Group and with Milsey Carrasco, our Director of Neighborhood Engagement, about how we can support residents on that block in dealing with the trauma that happened there yesterday. We understand and are very empathetic to a neighborhood witnessing and experiencing a death of a resident. Grace.
Okay, a couple more. I was going to ask, what is, so from the past protests that happened, we know that police, from talking with Chief Berkey, said that they don't want to step in and want to let people protest peacefully and do so and have their voices heard. What is the stepping point when police do have to intervene during protests and whatnot? Is there a certain point, have they been talking, or has the department been, is there a protocol for what they're supposed to do, because this is now something that's happening and has been happening over the past few months? Like, what does that look like?
So the question is there a protocol for when and how police respond, given changing circumstances or dynamics among the protests? That is really a decision that is made in the moment, depending on what is happening on the scene and who is involved. What happened last night happened after the hour of midnight through 3:30 a.m., if I've got my times correct. And there were definitely changing dynamics that resulted in protesters moving up the ramp that is adjacent to the police department. And I believe that they were, and again, these are details that are still emerging today, they were asked to step off and move back onto Chestnut Street. And it is because of those changing dynamics that the pepper spray and OC were used. Okay, Shelby, you got one more.
I did have one more question. It was kind of asked earlier, but what would it look like for the city as far as setting up, lines for people to call, dealing with these, not only mental health issues, whether crisis is currently happening, leading up to it, or again, just dealing with all of it?
Life, right?
Yeah.
So what would be needed to set up those kinds of phone numbers and to have that kind of resource staffed?
Engaging the community in that too. I know there's so many resources here.
Yeah.
There's so many people in the community that.
Yeah. I'm looking over at Vanessa, who is the CEO of the Community Action Partnership, and maybe Vanessa, you can speak to this. But here's the thing: the county is the recipient, statutory recipient of behavioral health dollars that come from the state. And then they have their behavioral health services department as well as subcontracting. What would need to happen is that the entities that are engaged in those service and that service delivery would need to come together in a different way to be able to provide those services. And in that way, this is something that is beyond the means of the city government and yet we can be a partner and a champion of doing and providing mental health services differently. And again, I'll just underscore that we've seen a decade of reduced budget to social services in this county, and I don't see that. I'm very concerned about what additional cuts, changes will happen in the future as we are staring down such a large state budget deficit. We have been able to augment certain services through emergency services grant, federal dollars, federal care dollars. They've been mostly focused on homelessness, eviction prevention, critical home repair, things like that, but not related to mental health specifically. Okay, last question.
Can you talk about what the officers know going into when they're responding? Would they have known who they were responding to, or that person's past?
I can't answer that question because I do not know what the 911 dispatch, and that would be something that would be a question to ask the district attorney as part of the investigation. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you're doing to help promulgate correct information. It matters more than ever. Thank you.